There is a generation of Americans that nobody talks about. Not the boomers with their pensions, not the millennials with their student loans, not Gen Z with their TikTok portfolios and crypto wallets. I'm talking about the generation sandwiched silently between all of them. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, right now somewhere between 44 and 59 years old. The generation that was handed a 401k instead of a pension raised themselves while their parents worked, survived two recessions before age 40, and is currently being financially crushed from every direction at once. And their money habits, they are unlike any other generation before or after them, not because Gen X is better or worse with money, because of what happened to them, because of the specific sequence of economic events, cultural forces, and institutional failures that shaped every financial decision they make, often without them even realizing it. If you are Gen X, this video is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. You're going to recognize yourself in these patterns, and you're going to understand why you are the way you are with money for possibly the first time. If you are a millennial or Gen Z watching this, this is a warning because the forces that shape Gen X are not gone. They've evolved, and they are coming for you next if you don't see them clearly. Let's talk about the most financially misunderstood generation in American history. To understand Gen X money habits, you have to understand what built them, because money psychology is not formed in a classroom. It's formed in the kitchen, in the news your parents watched, in the economic weather you grew up inside. Gen X grew up watching the 1970s stagflation, oil embargoes, 13% inflation, gas rationing. They were children watching their parents panic at the gas pump. Their earliest economic memory is scarcity. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, mortgage rates hit 18%. Their parents either bought houses at those rates and built equity or couldn't afford to and never caught up. That moment established the first of Gen X's core financial beliefs. Debt is dangerous, and you can miss the window if you're not paying attention. Then came the latchkey kid era. By the mid-1980s, both parents working was the norm, not the exception. Gen X came home to empty houses. They fed themselves. They managed themselves. They made decisions before anyone taught them how. This forged a fierce independence, a suspicion of institutions, and a default assumption that they would have to figure things out alone. That mindset shaped their relationship with money in ways that are still playing out today. They graduated into the early 1990s recession. Jobs were scarce, salaries were flat, credit card offers flooded mailboxes for the first time. Accessible, easy, predatory. Gen X used them, many for the first time in their family's history. Credit card debt became normalized for this generation the way student debt would later become normalized for millennials. Then the 1990s exploded. The dot-com boom, 401k accounts going up 20% a year. For the first time in their lives, Gen X had money. They bought houses. They started families. They invested for retirement in a bull market that felt like it would never end. Then 2000 hit, the dot-com crash. Their 401ks lost 40 to 50% of their value. Many cashed out, locking in the losses permanently. Then they rebuilt, bought more house, leveraged more equity. Then 2008 hit, and a generation that had already been punched twice got knocked flat. By the time Gen X recovered financially from 2008, they were in their late 30s and 40s. And they were now sandwiched, the first generation to simultaneously carry their parents' medical and elder care costs while raising children who needed college funding. Their money never had a chance to compound. It was always being pulled in four directions at once. That is the origin story. That is where the money habits come from. The cash hoard instinct. Ask a Gen Xer about their financial strategy, and a disproportionate number will tell you they keep a significant amount of cash on hand, not in investments. Not in high-yield savings accounts necessarily, just accessible cash, sometimes under the mattress metaphorically, sometimes literally. This is not financial irrationality. This is a deeply rational response to having lived through 2000 and 2008. When you watch a 401k lose half its value in 18 months, twice in 8 years, your brain updates its threat model. The market isn't just risky. The market can take everything you've built in a window you can't control. Cash doesn't do that. The data supports this pattern. According to Bankrate research, Gen X is the generation most likely to hold excess cash outside of investment accounts. The psychology underneath it is sound, but the execution costs them significantly in foregone compound growth, especially during the decade of 2010 to 2020 when the market averaged over 13% annually and many Gen Xers sat on the sidelines. Gen X is the most financially self-directed generation in American history, and not entirely by choice. They were the first generation handed 401k plans instead of pensions. The pension said, "Give us your working years and we'll handle the retirement math." The 401k said, "Here are some mutual fund options and a contribution form. Good luck." Nobody taught them how to use it. No employer education, no school curriculum, no YouTube. They figured it out themselves, or they didn't. The ones who did built significant wealth. The ones who didn't are facing the retirement crisis that CNBC and Fidelity have been documenting since 2024. The average Gen X 401k balance as of Q4 2025 is $222,100 according to Fidelity's analysis of 24.8 million plan participants. That sounds substantial until you know the number needed for a comfortable retirement is now estimated at $1.46 million, ends up $200,000 from just 2025 according to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress Study. Gen X on average has saved roughly 15% of what they need. The DIY philosophy built financial independence of mindset, but without financial literacy to match that independence, it also built a retirement gap that is the largest of any living generation. Gen X was told one thing clearly: owning a home is the path to wealth. Their parents proved it, their neighborhoods proved it, home values seem to only go up. So Gen X bought homes aggressively, often stretching to do it. And then many bought again after 2008 when prices collapsed, building equity in the recovery that followed. Today, nearly 73% of Gen X households own their home. For many, that home is their primary, sometimes only retirement asset. The equity is real, but equity is illiquid. You can't pay grocery bills with home equity. You can't cover a medical emergency without selling, refinancing, or taking out a home equity loan, all of which carry costs and risks. Gen X built wealth in bricks and mortar the way their parents told them to, but they didn't always diversify out of it. The result is a generation that looks wealthy on paper. Median net worth for Gen X aged 55 to 64 is $364,000, but that wealth is largely locked in a single illiquid asset they're living inside of. This one is not a habit, it's a trap, and it is the single most unique financial pressure of any living generation. Gen X is the sandwich generation. According to CNBC's 2025 research and Allianz's Retirement Income Institute, Gen X is the most likely generation to simultaneously be supporting aging parents while still funding children's education and living expenses. Not theoretically, actually, right now, today. The numbers: Gen X carries an average credit card balance of $9,123, the highest of any age group according to Experian's 2024 data. Total Gen X consumer debt exceeds $6.5 trillion, and a meaningful portion of that debt exists not because Gen X overspends on themselves, but because they are financially absorbing the needs of two generations on either side of them simultaneously. When you're paying your mother's assisted living costs, your child's college application fees, and your own mortgage in the same month, the retirement contribution gets skipped, not permanently, just this month, then next month, then a year has passed, then 5 years, and the gap widens. Only 16% of Gen X Americans feel they have saved enough for retirement, according to Schroders' 2025 U.S. Retirement Survey. That number is devastating. And it is largely explained not by irresponsibility, but by the structural financial crushing of being between two dependent generations during the most expensive years of American economic history. Gen X does not trust institutions, not fully, not the way boomers did. And when you look at their history, that distrust is earned. They were promised defined benefit pensions. Corporations eliminated them before they could collect. They were promised Social Security. They've watched that promise erode toward potential insolvency before their retirement age. They were told the market always goes up. They watched it collapse twice in 8 years. They were told home values always increase, and then 2008 proved otherwise. This distrust has two effects. One is healthy. Gen X does not blindly follow financial conventional wisdom. They question, they verify, they maintain independence. These are good instincts. The second effect is costly. Gen X often avoids professional financial advice out of the same distrust. According to research from the Global Advisor Group, Gen X is less likely than boomers to work with a financial planner and less financially confident than millennials or boomers, despite being the highest income age cohort. The DIY approach works when you have the knowledge to back it. When you don't, it just means navigating a complex system alone with more at stake and less time to recover from mistakes. Let's talk numbers. Not vibes, not feelings. The actual retirement math Gen X is staring at right now. The average Gen X 401k balance in Q4 2025, $222,100. Fidelity. 24.8 million plan participants. Hard data. The magic number Americans believe they need to retire comfortably in 2026, $1.46 million. Northwestern Mutual. Published April 2026. The gap, over $1.2 million per household for the generation that is 5 to 20 years from retirement. And remember, $222,100 is the average, which is pulled up by high balance outliers. The median Gen X retirement savings is closer to $115,000. Half of Gen X has less than $115,000 saved for retirement. Schroders' 2025 survey found Gen X expects to retire with $711,771, already a significant reduction from what they say they need. The actual average puts them below even that diminished expectation. Now here is where this gets both urgent and actionable. Gen X has something millennials and Gen Z don't have. They are in their peak earning years right now. The 45 to 59 window is historically the highest income decade of most American workers' careers. And in 2026, the IRS recognizes this with catch-up contribution rules. For 2026, 401k contribution limit for $23,500 per person. Catch-up contribution for age 50 plus, $8,000 additional. Total 2026 annual 401k maximum for Gen X aged 50 plus, $31,500 per person. For a couple, $63,000 per year into tax-advantaged retirement accounts. $63,000 a year invested at even a conservative 7% for 15 years grows to approximately $1.6 million. That math is available right now, specifically designed for exactly this gap, for exactly this generation. The Gen X retirement crisis is real, but it is not over. The window is narrow, and it requires treating catch-up contributions not as an option, but as a priority, the same way paying a mortgage is a priority before the sandwich generation's demands absorb every extra dollar. I want to stop here and say something clearly, because this video has covered a lot of struggle, and Gen X deserves to hear the other side. No generation has navigated more financial complexity, more institutional betrayal, more economic chaos, and kept moving than Gen X. They absorbed the 1990s recession, the dot-com crash, 9/11's economic impact, 2008, COVID, and they are still here, still working, still funding retirement while supporting everyone around them. Gen X is also the most financially resilient generation by certain measures. They are more likely than millennials to have an emergency fund, more likely than Gen Z to own their home outright. They have practical, hard-earned financial instincts that no app or algorithm can replace. They are also the first generation to build wealth through the 401k system, which, despite its flaws, has produced more millionaires than any savings mechanism in American history. The Gen X workers who maximize contributions through the 2010s bull market are sitting on portfolios that will fund genuinely comfortable retirements. They are proof that the system works when you work the system correctly. The goal of this video is not to tell Gen X they failed. The goal is to name the specific patterns, the cash hoarding, the institutional distrust, the sandwich generation bleed, that are operating below the surface so that you can make conscious decisions instead of default ones. Because you are not out of time, but you are out of room for passive decisions. 3 moves, specific, available in 2026, built for exactly the Gen X position. Max the catch-up contribution first, not after you pay off the car, not after the kids are done with college. First, $31,500 a year if you're 50 or over. Automate it so the sandwich demands can't absorb it. Treat it like a bill that was due yesterday. Audit the emergency fund rate. Gen X tends to hold excess cash, sometimes in accounts earning 0.5%, while HISO accounts are paying 4.2% in 2026. If you have cash sitting in a traditional savings account, moving it to a high-yield savings account requires a 20-minute transfer. That's not investing. That's just not leaving money on the table. Make the elder care financial conversation now. The single most common way Gen X bleeds wealth silently is absorbing aging parents' financial needs without a formal plan. If you are providing financial support to a parent, that conversation needs structure. What is the plan? What is the timeline? What is your limit? Having that conversation clearly now is not cold. It is the only way to protect both you and them from a financial cascade that serves neither. Gen X didn't get a financial instruction manual. They got a 401k form, a housing market that crashed twice, and 2 generations to support on either side. And they kept going. The money habits they built, the self-reliance, the distrust of institutions, the cash hoarding, the brick-and-mortar wealth strategy, all of those make complete sense when you understand where they came from. Which means now you can decide which ones to keep, which ones to upgrade, and which ones are quietly costing you the retirement you have earned. The window is narrow, the catch-up math is real, and Gen X, more than any other generation alive, knows how to grind through a narrow window. Subscribe to 9 to 5 Chimp, the money moves your 9 to 5 never taught you. Like this video. It helps more people find it. Comment below, are you Gen X, and which of these patterns hit closest to home? I read every one.